Ladies and gentlemen, the unthinkable just happened north of our border, Alberta. That's right, Canada's energy powerhouse has officially lit the fuse. New referendum laws just went live, and overnight, they've triggered what many are now calling the biggest political uprising in modern Canadian history. From Calgary to Red Deer, people are flooding town halls, chanting, "We're done with Ottawa." Now, here's the kicker. Saskatchewan just joined them. That's right, guys. This isn't just another online protest or some hashtag trend. This is clearly a full-blown, boots-on-the-ground, independent push fueled by frustration, by taxes, by Trudeau-era overreach, and now let's just say that it's got legal teeth. We're talking about citizen-initiated referendums that could put U.S. statehood or Western separation directly on the ballot. And with President Donald Trump back in the White House cheering them on from across the border, the timing really couldn't be any more explosive. So today, I want to break down the real truth behind Alberta's political detonation, how it all started, who's funding it, and why Ottawa is now on the verge of losing control of the entire West. Because get this, if Alberta and Saskatchewan walk, Canada will never look the same again. Hit the like button, subscribe, folks. Well, the spark that lit this fire, it wasn't a protest, it was a policy change buried deep inside of Alberta's legislature's fall season. Now, in late 2025, lawmakers quietly passed this Referendum and Citizens Initiative Act, lowering signature requirements, shortening waiting periods, and most importantly, allowing citizens, not politicians, to be able to propose binding votes. Now, it was supposed to make government more responsive, but instead, it handed frustrated Albertans the ultimate weapon, a legal path to independence. So overnight, organizers from the old Wexit movement resurfaced, rebranded, and realized that they no longer needed Ottawa's blessing anymore. One provincial official even warned privately, "We just legalized our own exit." And what did Ottawa do? They laughed. They dismissed it as symbolic. But every eye roll from Mark Carney's cabinet, every condescending CBC headline, it just poured gasoline on the prairie soil. So talk radio lines started blowing up. Telegram groups tripled overnight. Alberta's rebellion, it now had paperwork, official, lawful, unstoppable paperwork. In fact, the system that Ottawa built to silence the West just armed it with a megaphone. And by the time that they noticed, the countdown had already begun. So once those laws hit the books, Alberta didn't wait. No, within like 2 weeks, Western exit banners flooded social media. Edmonton, Calgary, even Red Deer saw record-breaking rallies, farmers waving Alberta flags beside American ones. You saw the oil patch workers chanting, "No more Ottawa." What used to be barstool grumbling turned into some organized chapters with bylaws, bank accounts, and field offices. The new Ipsos poll stunned the establishment. 58% of Albertans now open to independence or U.S. statehood. That number rivals Quebec's separatist peak in 1995. Corporate media called it dangerous populism. The people called it payback. Years of carbon taxes, stalled pipelines, and arrogance that Ottawa boiled over into a single rallying cry. "We'll run our own house." So what's happening here isn't a protest. This is a political awakening. Truckers, ranchers, even small business owners who never touch politics, they're suddenly collecting signatures and flying stars and stripes on the prairie pickups. The unity speeches from Ottawa, they sounded like the unity speeches from Ottawa, they sound like background noise now. The West isn't listening. In fact, it's planning its exit strategy. So when your grandkids look back, what do you want them to remember? A grandparent stressed out about Medicare bills, or one who was free to enjoy life with them? This is why I partner with Chapter. They protect your Medicare coverage so that you can protect your family time. Now, one of our viewers, she said, "Thanks to Chapter, my Medicare plan finally feels like it's helping me, not stressing me out." So let me ask, what promise do you want to keep with your grandkids? Now, most people, they're already dialing that phone number right there at the bottom of your screen, or they're visiting askchapter.org/Ron. That phone number again is 909-563-8279. Now, I'm going to go ahead and tell you right now, it really didn't take very long for the spark in Ottawa to jump the border with Saskatchewan, where the grain farmers and small town mayors had already been grumbling for years about Ottawa's crippling carbon tax and endless red tape. When Alberta passed its new referendum law, Saskatchewan's premier faced immediate pressure to follow suit. Within days, rural councils began introducing motions for prairie sovereignty coordination. In Kindersley, Weyburn, and Moose Jaw, local chambers held town halls titled, "Why Not Us?" The mood was electric. Truckers spoke about losing contracts to foreign import policies. Farm families warned of federal strangulation. I mean, the unspoken truth, they see Alberta's path as the escape hatch. Cross-province Zoom meetings are now uniting ranchers, energy executives, and small manufacturers into one bloc, the Prairie Alliance for Independence. Now, together, Alberta and Saskatchewan, they make up over half of Canada's oil and gas output and nearly all of its wheat exports. So if those provinces coordinate in a referendum, well, the foundation of Canada's economy doesn't just crack, it collapses. And this is why Ottawa's panic isn't paranoid, it's survival instinct. In fact, then came President Donald Trump, throwing jet fuel on the already roaring prairie fire. So at a rally in Houston last week, the president joked, "Why sell your oil to Ottawa when you can sell it to America?" The crowd exploded, and so did Alberta's independent chat rooms. In fact, what once felt theoretical suddenly looked possible. Trump's Energy Independence 2.0 agenda invites open cooperation with resource-rich allies. Alberta checks every box: oil, agriculture, minerals, and now political momentum. His administration quietly confirmed exploratory talks about a cross-border energy corridor that would completely bypass Ottawa entirely. In fact, the message was clear. Washington's door is open. For thousands of Albertans and Saskatchewanians, Trump's voice carries more weight than Mark Carney's entire cabinet. Drop a Trump down below if you're watching from Canada and you agree with that. His message: lower taxes, strong borders, energy dominance. It all aligns perfectly with Western Canada's culture. And so now, U.S. flags, they're waving at Alberta rallies, not out of fantasy, but foreshadowing. In fact, what was once separatist daydreaming has turned into economic logic. And for the first time ever, the prairie provinces aren't asking for permission from Ottawa. They're taking inspiration from Washington. Now, behind the closed doors of Parliament Hill, it's chaos. Prime Minister Mark Carney, the so-called steady hand, is watching unity polls collapse faster than loony. His cabinet leaks tell the whole story. Half of his ministers, they want to threaten legal action against Alberta. The other half is begging for compromise. Even Justin Trudeau, now an elder statesman, is hiding. He's in hiding and has reportedly been advising Carney to stand firm, even if it means force. Carney's problem? Well, he's not facing activists anymore. He's actually facing voters with a legal mandate. Every attempt to lecture the West about climate responsibilities backfires spectacularly. I mean, his proposed home equity surtax, a plan to tax property sales, this was the last straw for homeowners who are already feeling like they were robbed by inflation. And in Alberta, it's being branded the punishment for success. Now, Ottawa's arrogance turned into ammunition. Every time Mark Carney preaches net zero, oil workers roll their eyes. Every time CBC dismisses separatists as fringe, another 1,000 signatures hit the referendum petition. The capital's elites once mocked the West, but now they're realizing that the West might walk and never come back. Now, it all came to a head in Red Deer. This is the heart of Alberta's rebellion. Thousands packed the Civic Center last weekend for what looked less like a political meeting and looks more like a declaration of independence. In fact, the Alberta Republican Party, newly formed but fast growing, hosted the event. Its slogan was printed on every banner: freedom, faith, federalism, no more Ottawa. People drove in from Edmonton, Calgary, even rural Saskatchewan. Inside, organizers presented draft plans for a provisional Alberta constitution. In fact, the crowd erupted when one speaker declared, "We don't need permission to be free." Outside, local police reported the largest political gathering in central Alberta since the trucker convoy of 2022. National media called it dangerous extremism. Locals called it our Boston Tea Party. And when the final speaker shouted, "If Trudeau can't hear us, Washington will," the entire crowd stood up waving American and Alberta flags in unison. In fact, the chant that followed, "No more Ottawa," shook the entire building. That was the night that Western independence stopped being theory and actually became a movement. So at the very heart of this uprising isn't just politics, it's money. Alberta has poured tens of billions of dollars into Ottawa's equalization program, subsidizing provinces that actively vote against its economic interests. Every dollar that's shipped east feels like another insult. So while Ottawa lectures about climate justice, Alberta's oil royalties, they're footing the bill for programs in Quebec that ultimately block the very pipelines that feed the national budget. Now, under U.S. statehood, those payments vanish overnight. Alberta would keep 100% of its energy profits and slash corporate taxes on American levels, 15%, not 27%. Economists estimate that alone would add $40 billion a year back into Alberta's economy. President Trump's Commerce Department is rumored to be studying the numbers already. In fact, Mark Carney warns that it would destabilize Canada. But Albertans are countering that. They're saying it already is. You can't chain the golden goose to a bureaucratic wall and then expect it to sing. As one Red Deer entrepreneur said, "We built this country. They bleed it dry." The rebellion isn't just ideological, it is financial survival. And now, Alberta's accountants are doing the math louder than its politicians. So now, here's where it gets complicated and very dangerous. The Canadian Constitution offers no clear path for provincial succession. In fact, Ottawa insists any independence referendum must go through Parliament, Supreme Court approval, and bilateral negotiation. But Alberta's new referendum law quietly rewrites the script. It allows citizen-led initiatives on any matter of public interest. Translation, they're daring Ottawa to stop them. Constitutional experts warn of a legal time bomb. Now, if Alberta proceeds with a sovereignty vote without federal consent, Ottawa could declare it invalid, but that only fuels resentment. Others suggest Mark Carney might invoke emergency powers similar to Trudeau's 2022 convoy crackdown. Now, imagine that. Troops or RCMP clashing with protesters waving both U.S. and Alberta flags. Can you imagine that? This is Canada's Article 50 moment, like Brexit, but with oil, borders, and guns. Every procedural challenge becomes a political headline. Every delay looks more like dictatorship. And while Ottawa debates legal theory, Alberta is writing its own. So whether constitutional or not, the people are already voting. They're voting with their voices, with their money, and with their flags. So as the movement spreads, Canada's corporate media went into full meltdown mode. CBC, CTV, and the Globe and Mail, they all ran near identical headlines calling the independence wave dangerous populism. Reporters labeled Alberta's rallies radical and unpatriotic, but their scorn only made it grow. In the age of live streams and social platforms, the West doesn't need permission to tell its story anymore. In fact, it's telling it directly to the people. Meanwhile, Rebel News, Western Standard, and Epoch Times Canada, they're filling the vacuum, broadcasting the chants, the billboards, and the town halls that mainstream media just won't show you. Viewership has absolutely exploded. Ottawa's rumored plan to crack down on digital misinformation is being seen as an attempt to censor dissent. And that's only pouring jet fuel on the fire. In fact, the divide is now cultural as much as it is political. Eastern elites talk about unity, Westerners talk about freedom. The same flag now represents two nations sharing one border but opposite values. And no matter what Mark Carney says, it's very clear. The media's war for hearts and minds is one that Ottawa is losing right now. So here's the part that just really keeps Ottawa awake at night. Behind the headlines, American energy firms are already running cost models for a potential Alberta partnership. If Alberta joins the U.S. as the 51st state, it would instantly become America's #1 domestic oil supplier. Think about it. Completely eclipsing Texas and Alaska combined in proven reserves. Refineries in Montana and North Dakota, they could plug directly into Alberta's system. No export taxes, no carbon levies, no Trudeau interference. Border dynamics would change overnight. U.S. Customs could absorb key crossings like Coots and Sweetgrass, forming a new energy corridor district. The Pentagon would gain a friendly northern defense partner, while Alberta would gain guaranteed protection under the U.S. Constitution. Now, for President Trump, it is a geopolitical win. Cheaper oil, stronger borders, and a humiliated Ottawa. But for Canada, it would be existential collapse. Losing Alberta and Saskatchewan would strip billions in revenue and shatter its resource backbone. The question now isn't whether the U.S. wants Alberta, it's whether Alberta still wants Canada. So now, here we are, guys. This is the point of no return. What started as a single billboard near Bowdoin has now become a continental earthquake. Hashtags like hashtag Western Exit and hashtag 51st State Now, they're trending daily. Alberta influencers are live streaming from town halls. Saskatchewan farmers are posting videos calling Trump their neighbor in chief. Wow. The West isn't whispering about independence anymore. In fact, it is organizing it. Mark Carney's government faces a nightmare choice right now: reform or fracture. Compromise could keep Canada together, but it would mean surrendering control of energy, taxation, and immigration to the provinces. Refusal could spark the largest constitutional crisis since Confederation. Meanwhile, President Trump keeps stoking the flames, calling Alberta's leaders patriots fighting for freedom. This isn't just politics, it's identity. Alberta and Saskatchewan, they've reached the point where being Canadian feels like a penalty, not a privilege. And for millions who are watching, one truth has become impossible to deny. When a nation stops listening to its builders will build something new. Canada's West has stood up, and the rest of the world is holding its breath. Hit the like button, share this video, subscribe. We'll see you next time.